Mans. Its history stretches back to 1923, and it is a history of change. The track has changed, morphing through a dozen configurations. Even driving technique has changed. What has not changed is that Le Mans remains the performance showcase for manufacturers around the world. It remains a high-stakes gamble, the struggle to find the fine line between speed and reliability. It is a race of great beauty, cradled in the soft light of northern France and the magic of the night. It is a race of violence erupting unexpectedly. It is a race of elaborate tactics and simple glory for being able to tell your children and your children's children, I won the greatest endurance race of them all. But to win, you must first master this road. On the very special day, it's called Le Mans.
The concrete canyon here at Le Mans, lying with the pits on the left, the great grandstands over on the right, and cars, 47 of them, centered. Welcome to Speedvision's coverage of the classic race here at Le Mans. Now, winning this year is going to be something really special for this particular reason. More major manufacturers are represented this year than in any year in recent memory. And there's a great feeling right now in France with the French Open Classic at Roland Garros coming to its conclusion this weekend, and of course the World Cup getting underway here next week. And it'll be a great weekend on Speedvision, of course, too, because not only are we bringing you this race, but we will have live coverage from the Grand Prix of Canada of both the qualifying and the race itself. Live coverage here on Speedvision. But what better way to start our coverage here of Le Mans than by going down to the pits to my friend Davy Jones, the last American to win this great classic. Davy?
Thank you, Sam, and this is certainly a different perspective for me standing here at the start of the race, because I have been in the driver's situation to where I have started this race in 1996. And what's going through the driver's mind is all the anxiety. They've done their morning warm-up of a half an hour. They've had their final team debriefing session. They've done all their driver changes, and now this is the real thing. They're just want to get through the first lap. They want to make sure that the car runs smoothly, that they don't touch, you know, as the race settles down, and then just pick it up from there. More on the speed of the qualifying, I'd like to pass it to my colleague Calvin Fish.
Well, the battle for supremacy here at Le Mans has really gone the way of the GT cars, at least in qualifying. In fact, the pole-winning Jost Porsche, the prototype machine, set a faster time this year, but they're back on the 9th position on the grid. Up front is the GT battle. In fact, the surprise was the Porsche, which topped the pre-qualifying times, was not a factor here in the outright battle for the pole position. It came down to the new Toyota, driven by ex-Formula One star Martin Brundle, who set the fastest time on the first day, and then the second day, which is traditionally given to the race setup, Mercedes went back out. And the number 35 machine, driven by Bernd Schneider, set a scintillating lap of 3 minutes 35.5 to wrest the pole away from Brundle. He'll start from the front, but as we all know, Mercedes may have won the battle in qualifying, but to win Le Mans, you must first beat Porsche. And to give us more insight to the race this coming weekend, I'll turn it over to the play-by-play guy, Greg Kramer.
Well, thank you very much, Calvin, and hi, everybody. Indeed, Mercedes' determination to get the pole as they gave up the normal time to spend working on the race for the pole in that second qualifying. They were behind. The only choice they had was to go to the airport just a couple of kilometers from here to do a little bit of testing. And they got a little bit lucky. If we have some rain today, they got the conditions for it. As you can see, they were laying in some very high-speed runs in some very wet conditions. That is going to help them perhaps as the race unfolds. And we were talking about the manufacturer battle. The reason Mercedes wanted the pole so bad is the prestige. 6 full factory efforts 8 if you want to count 2 factory-assisted efforts with a few Ferraris and Ford representing Panos. The factories are here in force. And to expand on that just a little bit is our analyst, Andrew Marriott. Andrew.
Yeah, well, I think the big surprise here has been the lack of pace of those sports prototypes. But I think in the race, it might just come to them. I'm really putting my money on the BMW. A lot of technology from Williams Grand Prix Engineering in that car. They started the project quite late, but they really have come good here. And also, we mustn't forget the Yost Porsches, their Le Mans prototypes. They've won it for the last 2 years, Sam. They could do it again.
Well, Andrew, if there is a sentimental favorite here this year, it must be Porsche. They are celebrating their 50th anniversary as a car company. They first won this great race back in 1970. Since then, they've won it 15 times. Their great leader, Dr. Porsche, died this year. They would very much like to win it again for him and for themselves this year. Stay with us. Less than 25 minutes to go now before the start. We'll be right back.
Speedvision's coverage of the 24 Hours of Le Mans is brought to you by the new Dodge. It's about change. Rolex, the watch of excellence the world over. And Michelin, celebrating 100 years of innovation, because so much is riding on your tires.
Welcome back. We are live here in Le Mans, France, just 21 minutes or so from the start of this great classic race. Hello, everybody. Remember, we're going to be on the air for a full 12 hours during the next 24, so be sure to check your clocks, get that coffee out. Ordinarily, these races break down into a battle between a David and a Goliath. Usually the Goliath is Porsche in there somewhere with somebody nipping at their heels. But this year, there are so many major manufacturers, it's hard to find a David anywhere in the whole field. There might be one, though, and it's an American entry, and Calvin Fish has the full story. Calvin?
Well, the man you are looking at is Don Panos, and he really is the David in the David and Goliath story. He has a passion for Le Mans, and he brought his team here last year for the very first time, and they barely made it into the field. They struggled. They had mechanical problems. They couldn't get the engine to work correctly, but they vowed to come back. They were, in fact, running in the top 10 after 19 hours before both cars were out. But they're back this year. They're very much a dark horse for victory here at Le Mans. But to tell us about the Goliath here at Le Mans, let's turn it down to Davy Jones.
Yes, Porsche has a very, very strong and intuition to win this race again in each class. They have 2 cars in the prototype division, they have 2 cars in the GT1 division, and they have 12 entries in the GT2 division. And in fact, to give the GT1 cars have been the fastest overall through the week, but the prototype car has been the most reliable. And to have that in their court, they've taken on the 2 Yost entry cars and put them under their flag with the development of new aerodynamics, new gearbox, new data acquisition electronics, just to give them every advantage they have to make this their most memorable year ever.
Thanks a lot, Davey. Great report. Greg, the David and Goliath theme, of course, if you play it back exactly a year ago, applied to Viper. They were new to this game a year ago, and they had a very interesting season of it.
They were the David then, certainly. They are certainly, in terms of GT2, the Goliath now. They are here with a 5-car effort, perhaps the most intense American United States manufacturer effort here at Le Mans in almost 30 years. They are serious about winning GT2 here in Le Mans. They won the FIA championship last year, but that, after all, is not Le Mans. They truly feel they have something to prove right here.
The Dodge Viper is a beautiful machine, but in last year's race, the entire fleet of Vipers appeared to be snake-bitten, with the most memorable incident being this fire which destroyed the team car of Tommy Archer. This year, however, the Vipers have returned with a vengeance, breaking the 4-minute barrier in qualifying.
It was a great lap. We were so close during the pre-qualification that we decided to try to go below this 4 minutes, and I think it's a record for GT2 to go below 4 minutes, and it will be, I think, very difficult for competitors to beat it.
Of course, in endurance racing, to be first, you must first finish. A lot can happen in 24 hours.
It's so long, you know, because till the last minute, you never know. Last year, as you say, we were leading the race easily, but in 24 hours, you can have many problems. The 2 main problems that can happen is a mechanical failure or a driver mistake. And this year, we have prepared this race very, very seriously. We have tried to take the best driver line that we can, and now we cross finger. I think the team is really ready, top ready, but it's so long, 24 hours.
That sub-4-minute lap that he referred to really stood this place on its ear, however. The cars are just back from a single warm-up lap. You see them on the grid. There is just about 17 minutes and change to go. We will be back here at Le Mans with more live coverage. Don't go away. Here we are back again at Le Mans. The cars have completed their warm-up lap, and the fog or light rain, which greeted us this morning when we first arrived here at this circuit, is starting to lift. We may yet have a clear day for this magnificent race. The tension is unbelievable because, as you know, half of the publicity centers around that first lap. If you can be out front and get your picture plastered across all the evening papers this evening and morning papers tomorrow morning, you're in good shape. By Monday morning, you start to compete with some of the other sports. The drivers are in their cars. I have a marvelous vantage point from up here. You can see we have several onboard cameras. We'll be bringing you the details of that later on, but we're going to have a marvelous view inside these different cars. Now, in Stamford, we have our men standing by with their studio operation, and we go now across the Atlantic to Bill Patrick.
All right. Thank you very much, Sam. Welcome to Speed Weekend International Headquarters in Stamford, everybody. Over the next 2 days, Speedvision will be on the air live for over 15 hours, bringing you coverage of the 24 Hours of Le Mans, Grand Prix of Canada, and FIM World Superbike from Germany. Here is a complete list now of the Speed Weekend International lineup. Very shortly, we'll be heading back to Le Mans for live coverage of the world's greatest endurance race. Then 1 p.m. Eastern, we'll send you to Montreal for live Formula One qualifying from the Grand Prix of Canada. Immediately following that, 3 more hours from Le Mans from 2 to 5 Eastern. That will wrap up our live coverage for the day. If you miss any action at all from the 24-hour race, we'll have a 3-hour day 1 recap from 8 to 11 Eastern. Then again from 8 to 11 Pacific for those of you on the West Coast. We'll have live Le Mans coverage resuming early Sunday morning from 2 to 3 a.m. Eastern for the overnight update. Then we'll take a quick nap and be back at 6 a.m. for the finish. Grand Prix coverage from Canada starts at 12:30 p.m. with the pre-race show, followed by a 1 o'clock race starts. Then Speed Weekend International wraps up with same-day FIM World Superbike action from Germany. A huge weekend here on Speedvision. Getting back to Le Mans, joining me in the studio, a couple of Le Mans veterans to help us in our endeavor this weekend, Derek Daly and David Hobbs. And Derek, first of all, the GT1 cars have dominated in qualifying so far at Le Mans. It's really quite a surprise.
Maybe not so much a surprise, because if you think most of the manufacturer development dollars have been poured into those vehicles in the last 2 seasons, I think the irony of it is they were introduced to be cheaper form of racing and more like road cars because the prototypes were so expensive. The irony of it is they are far more expensive to develop and race than the prototypes ever were.
David, weather is threatening in France. You have driven there in the rain before. What's it like?
It's absolutely horrible. There's no doubt about it that Le Mans in the rain is one of those places where Denny Hulme, the New Zealand Grand Prix driver, used to say, "Park it, mate," because, I mean, it is very, very fast. 141 mile an hour average for the pole, and you average that pretty well day and night for the next 24 hours, and it's very slick. It's a flat, wide road, picks up the water, and you got some real high-speed runs from Mulsanne down to Arnage, from Arnage back to the Porsche pits. I mean, you get some nasty aquaplaning going.
Oh, good. It should be very interesting. That's going to do it for us for right now. Enjoy the ride this weekend. Right now, let's head back to France for the start of the 24 Hours of Le Mans on Speed Weekend International live here on Speedvision.
Well, we miss your company very much, gentlemen. And Derek, to address what you said about the GT1 cars, they're announcing a new class for next year. It'll be called GTX, which sort of takes the pressure a little off there trying to look so much like a road car. And David, we miss you. We've had no one to select the wines. It's really been a tough time for us back here. Now, there is one man in this field who has a shot at what is called the Triple Crown of racing, and his name is Gianpiero Moretti. In little trouble getting his car started a few minutes ago. I hope that's not a bad omen. Take a look at this.
This year, Gianpiero Moretti and his number 30 Momo Ferrari come to Le Mans with a similar opportunity. At the season opening Rolex 24 Hours of Daytona, the team was victorious with Dr. Moretti behind the wheel. An emotional moment for the driver, who in his victory lane interview appeared to announce his retirement from racing. Then it was on to Sebring for its historic 12-hour endurance contest, and Moretti was still driving. He now says that he meant he would retire at the end of this season. Anyhow, with help from Didier Tays and Mauro Baldi, the team took top honors at Sebring to wrap up the 36 Hours of Florida. Now Moretti leads his team to Le Mans with a chance for the hat trick. Last year, their Ferrari 333 SP finished 6th overall. This year, can they claim victory in all 3 major endurance races?
I got this question from many other people, and I say that if we win here, we will be so lucky to win here that I will never go out of the house anymore because something will happen to me.
Interestingly, Dr. Moretti says his Rolex 24-hour Daytona win would mean more to him than a win here at Le Mans.
I raced for many years in the States, and for me the goal was to win Daytona. Le Mans is sure is a very important race, and everybody's looking. You have many manufacturers and everything, but I don't have the same desire to win Le Mans like I had to win Daytona.
And here we are with Gianpiero Moretti just before the start of the 24 hours. Gianpiero, the 24 hours Daytona, 12 hours of Sebring. What is the thoughts going in today? I know the rules aren't particularly in your favor for the 24 hours of Le Mans, but what's your overview?
It is exactly what you are saying. We have a lot of pressure because everybody thinks that we have the same rule like in the States. So, oh, now you will do the triple, you will do the triple. No, I don't do anything here. They gave so many advantages to the GT that if we win here, it's just for luck, not because we have the best car or we are driving well. It's just because everybody will break down, but I don't believe that everybody will break down.
But nutrition is a big factor, particularly for the GT1 cars. How do you feel, after Daytona and Sebring, your reliability is proven?
Yeah, but I am frustrated because there we were equal. And so the best team, the best organization won. Here is just who has the best advantage from the rules.
Well, best of luck to all the Ferrari effort, and let's go for 3 in a row.
Thank you.
Back to the booth.
The Moretti team, of course, struggling with a car that has too much downforce on a track which demands so much top speed. There's another team here going for a triple crown of sorts. It's the Yost team. They've won the last 2 in a row. Back in the 80s, they won 2 in a row also. Could they come through and win 3? The factory certainly hopes so. The Porsche factory does, putting a lot of emphasis on the Yost team. All right, the cars are starting to roll away. Start now is one warm-up lap away. 24 hours of Le Mans, just moments away. Stay with me. Right back.
That was 2 years ago, 1996, when Davy Jones and his teammates brought that Sanex Yost Porsche to their first win. Of course, it was repeated by the team last year, and they are looking to perhaps, as we have indicated, pull off that hat trick. Take a look at the onboard camera. This is one of the shots we'll be enjoying throughout the day, and it is remarkable. Now, there have been a fairly solid string of past winners in this when we take a look back, and of course, there are 2 that spring to mind. You take a look at the Peugeots in 92 and 93. They went back-to-back. And of course, the Yost Porsches, 96 and 97, they went back-to-back. They have the best chance at the hat trick in a long, long time. There's no question. Once again, the field underway on the formation lap. Remember now, this lap is some 8+ miles long, so it takes a bit of time for them to get around. Everything should be plenty warmed up, no problems whatsoever. Let's take a look at the starting grid, and it is a good one of the strongest that we have seen in some time, our Porsche starting grid. As you take a look at it, the unbelievable lap of Bernd Schneider put the Mercedes on pole again in that second day. Very unusual, but very effective, alongside Martin Brundle in one of those remarkable Toyota GT1s. In the second row, another of the Mercedes, Jean-Marc Gounod, will start that car, and next to him, on the outside, will be the number 25 Porsche GT1. Jörg Müller will be starting that machine. In the third row, another of the Porsches, Alan McNish, will be driving that machine. And next to him, Andrew, one of those BMWs that you had talked about, Pierluigi Martini, will be driving the first of the Open Top World Sports Cars.
Yeah, just get some outstanding pictures there from the Ferrari. You see, that's Jean-Christophe Bouillon at the wheel. I think the Ferraris, just as we heard Moretti say, they really don't have much of a chance. They aren't for this race. Just one of the Toyotas going through the pictures. But really, the big thing to look at, Greg, now is that first lap. They really can't resist it, you know, these guys. They really go for it. They want to lead, pass this line the first time through, and in that first hour, there's going to be a big Grand Prix. And we're going to be counting the laps too, because that will show the sort of fuel consumption. Until now, all through that qualifying, maybe they've been sandbagging. We really don't know. Really, it doesn't start until it starts.
Absolutely, and again, keep in mind the GT2 category, an intense battle going on there, and that pole, that sub-4-minute lap, 3 minutes 59.981 by the number 51 at Chrysler Viper, which Olivier Beretta will be starting. A remarkable lap, and again, the battle there is going to be intense as well.
Yeah, Greg, and it's great to have in the booth with us David Murray making his debut here. David.
Yes.
What do you think about this, and would you like to be sitting in that car?
Well, I think I'll be sitting there pretty soon myself. Coming to Le Mans, there's so little practice time with so much to do. Normally, you don't get very much practice time before the race. So I've had approximately 20 laps so far, 8 of those at night. But I feel fairly comfortable with the track, which way it goes. At night, not too difficult. You can see it, but going fast is another matter.
What sort of instructions has the team got?
Well, actually, we're going to try and run as hard as we can without upsetting the car, hurting the car in any way whatsoever. So we're just going to try to make sure we get a pace that keeps going.
Again, that pace working right now. The formation lap trying to get everything warmed up, turning off of the actual public highways here into the Porsche curves. A very intense section of track, Andrew.
Yeah, I think people just don't realize what a magnificent circuit this is. It is one of the most testing circuits anywhere in the world.
This is the Toyo Tires track map, as you indicate, and it is absolutely breathtaking, this circuit. You come down where the checkered flag is there, just past the Ford chicane is the pit straight, and it is something different everywhere on this track.
Very fast course. There's only one real slow corner. That's the Arnage corner, and then quite a long run into the Porsche curves. That's a very, very technical part of the racetrack. David, perhaps you take us a little bit further, right here into the Ford chicane and so on through.
Sure. Actually, the Porsche curves are quite a bit faster than you think. I've walked them over and over from, you know, I didn't get a chance to drive the car in pre-qualifying, so I took the scooter and drove around the course, walked it, and it doesn't look as fast as it is. It has so much grip. You go in, you may go to 4th gear, but you're 4th gear all through the Porsche S's, which is a lot faster than you think. And it just has so much grip, it's tremendous. And obviously, the more downforce you got, the faster you're going.
And a track like this, of course, promotes some interesting items to follow our Porsche storylines. First of all, we've touched on the huge manufacturer battle. It is massive, perhaps the greatest entry, certainly, since the post-war, the 50th running here at Le Mans. The GT1, the perceived dominance of those cars, incredibly strong. Can the Viper deliver? It certainly looks like it can, but it's a long race. And the weather, Andrew, is iffy.
Very iffy. Last night there was a massive thunderstorm. There was hail. It almost would have broken the whole concentration of everybody there. But let's just hope we don't have a thunderstorm like that.
We are heading now, as you can see, the cars through that final turn, the right-hander of the Ford chicane.
And the Bentley Arnage, a new model, will peel off. Very, very slow, going into this final run to the line. They time it exactly, so they start bang on. Normally, of course, it's 4 o'clock French time. Today it's 2 o'clock, and the lights are green, and it's go!
We are underway.
to think that Brundle was just getting in front there. We'll see them as they go up here. Oh, look at Schneider! Schneider goes around the inside. Oh, I told you, it's a Grand Prix from the beginning. Ridiculous.
Well, again, the prestige of leading the first lap, leading the first hour, we're seeing it played out. And a great start by one of those BMWs. That car has leapfrogged into third place. BMW serious about this as well. Then the other Mercedes running fourth. A great battle, but Schneider leads Brundle, then the BMW, Mercedes, and the first of the GT1 Porsches.
Yeah, I think it's Tom Christensen in that BMW. We'll get a better view of it in a moment. And now they set down the long Mulsanne straight. And still lots of wheel-to-wheel racing. Usually there's action here at this first chicane. We have people spinning off here regularly on the first lap.
Look at that, fanning out, David, 3 abreast heading into that first chicane. This is a 24-hour race.
Well, I tell you, I've done Daytona many times, and it's the same thing. That first lap there in Sebring and here is important for the first lap and the first hour. You want to show well because you know the world's watching.
And we have seen the outright blinding speed of the Toyota, Sam, as he just drove by the Mercedes in between Tartaruga and that first chicane. Brundle leads.
Well, Brundle, of course, is a former Grand Prix driver, and he is really, really good. He is fully aware of the PR implications, let's put it that way. But look at the order here. I mean, we've got the Toyota, we've got the Mercedes-Benz, we've got BMW, we've got Porsche. This is what we were talking about before the race began. A major battle among major manufacturers.
One wonders about the concern for Toyota. It is such a new program. Are they going after the lead early? A little concern, perhaps, about making it to the finish. They want to get some prestige, some acknowledgement of being fast and at the front.
Yeah. Well, they've got that already, and I think just looking at that BMW going through the picture, I think that's Pierluigi Martini. A lot of Grand Prix experience there, and of course he knows this track very well indeed.
As you watched him go into the Mulsanne hairpin, that car was dancing. They are working very, very hard in this opening lap going into that corner. They want to run strongly at the front.
Well, that's what I was going to say. The BMW is very surprising to have the sports car that far this early. I expected it to take further into the stint because they'll be better on the tires. We have a little wider tire and a little lighter car, and that's what we have to make up for the sheer speed.
I think the surprising thing perhaps is that the car, even on the long Mulsanne, broken up or happened by a couple of the chicanes. That car is holding on with these GT machines. And Davy Jones, the opening lap, you've driven it before.
Racers, and no matter how much you can prepare for a 24-hour race, how many debriefings you have, how much practice you have, the anxiety as a driver into those opening laps until the race settles down and you figure out what position you're in and you go from there. It's a flat-out race. Down here in the pit box at the moment, I mean, the teams, they're preparing for a 24-hour race, but I assure you that every single crew member is just glued to a television monitor, just as anxious as we are watching this telecast.
And David, the car's now working those Porsche curves you were talking about, and you can see it is very quick.
It's very quick, and the sports car should close up just a bit through the Porsche curves, lose a little in the straight, although the BMW, when we were testing at Paul Ricard, I wasn't there, but Pierre Raffinel told me that the BMW is very quick in the straight. The handling's not as good as our car, so hopefully maybe that will come into play later in the stint as the tires go off.
And that Toyota running in fourth, pressuring the BMW right there, and the BMW driving some defensive lines, wanted to maintain that top 3 position through the opening lap, has done so. Now we'll see if things settle in, but Andrew, that BMW was scrapping for that position.
Yes, it certainly was. You see all the Toyotas well up, the 2 Porsches running well together, and then you see the first Nissan, that's down in about 9th place.
Again, the Nissan's perhaps the most developed of all of the GT cars here. They've done some immense testing. I saw a quote at one point. They referred to them, they've tested so much, they're almost bomb-proof, they think.
They seem to be, at this point, speed-proof. They're running pretty slowly. But again, the point is that what we look at for the first hour or so is a speed derby and relates very little. I mean, over the past years, you'll find that the leading team managers all set paces that see their strategy only come to life a little bit later in the race, Andrew.
Yeah, and in that second Toyota, that's Thierry Boutsen at the wheel. So Thierry having a good run, enormously experienced, of course, over 100 Grand Prix, and furthermore, a Grand Prix winner. And he looks as if he's just picking up a place.
That, I believe, is also the third of the Toyotas has popped out, trying to get around the Mercedes, the second qualified Mercedes. So the Toyota's trying to advance up here, but that stout battle continues right now. in the third spot. Now let's take a look on board with the number 27 Toyota. And you can, I mean, look at this. With the glare that we're seeing already today, we don't have a lot of sun, but those white clouds, a little bit of dampness to the pavement, there's some glare working inside that car.
Yeah, I think they'll see as the weather changes and the lighting changes, although it looks fairly bright here. Maybe we'll get lucky and some of this will burn off and we'll have a nice day.
Good battling. Now we look backward now, and that is from the Jabouille Ferrari. And you can see as they are working that sequence there, they are getting closed up on pretty intently under braking.
Yeah, Jean-Christophe Bouillon at the wheel. I gather he's just been over to America talking to some kart teams, so maybe we'll see him racing in America. A Williams test driver, of course, in the past, has done some Grand Prix, but Bouillon, one of the quietest men I've ever met in motor racing. He won't say boo to a goose.
And once again, we're watching that BMW laying into that Mulsanne. That really surprises me. I mean, I understand they want to run fast, but to see them really dancing on the braking underneath, heading into Mulsanne surprises me a little bit.
Well, as Andrew pointed out, of course, the BMW is really the last of these major cars to be made ready for this race. I mean, their program is really nascent. I mean, it's barely begun. So do they have the confidence that they can see it through the 24 hours? Maybe not. So, but no matter what, they want to put their name in the record books and look good if they can. I mean, if it starts to look possible to last, they may be the most surprised people around.
Once again, there is now the second place to Mercedes of Bernd Schneider. It had qualified on pole, and look at this action into the Dunlop curves. We'll be right back. Welcome back once again to our coverage of Le Mans. The battle continues for third. The BMW, the Le Mans prototype, as they call them here, a world sports car essentially, under huge attack still from the Toyota GT-ONE, the GT1 from Toyota. Some tremendous battling through what they call Terre Rouge, and that is a crucial corner on this track as it leads you onto what appears to be the longest chunk of the Mulsanne Straight now that is broken into 3 segments.
Yeah, it does, and the speed's quite tremendous at the end of that, and then you go into the fast corners after that. So its track is very high speed everywhere you go, and you can see the cars going to the chicane now. But you get the 6th gear and you just ride, and you just kind of look around and see where the rest of the cars are. You just kind of have to wait until you get to the end. That's that positioning going into the chicane.
And as we saw, one of the Porsches taking a look to go around the Mercedes of Jean-Marc Gounod couldn't quite get it done, and he was running in pretty close company. That's the battle we're looking at right now. May have been a little bit of psychology, may have been just to get some air to the car and the driver. It is so thick out there.
Well, I'm sure they're not happy about running behind a car like that, because it does make the temperatures go up a bit, and if he looks like he may be holding him up just a touch if he's that close to him. So he's not going to take any chances. I know they're interested for the long run. That's why the Porsches are running together, not going to try to pass each other. But if they can make a pass on the Mercedes, make a clean pass and get away, then I think they'll be happier.
Watching that battle for 6th, and they have just exited now the second chicane. Oh, we go one of the Vipers already into the pits, the number 56 entry, Andrew. Problems there? Saw a quick glimpse of that Porsche once again trying to make the move, but the Viper, one of the Vipers, is in.
Yeah, that's the car that's actually driven by an American, Matt Turner, a young American driver experiencing Le Mans here, and it's one of the Chamberlain engineering cars. And there's a couple of other experienced guys in there, and I think Calvin is down there to check out the problem.
Well, obviously, as you can see, the pit strategy here at Le Mans is that the fueling has to be done first before any work can be done to the car. They're going to the rear end of the car. I'd imagine it may be some kind of vibration or something in the braking area, possibly. They've only taken off the rear wheel of the car right now. They're looking underneath. Right now, there's some conjecture as to what the problem is exactly. The left rear is going back on. They're talking to the driver. They're actually making some changes inside the cockpit on the other side of the car right now. So I didn't see anything amiss with the car, Andrew, but obviously a pit stop at this stage of the game is not part of the game plan.
Obviously not. I think you'll find that it's Matt Turner that's in the car. You might just check it out with Hugh Chamberlain, but that's a disappointment. But Chamberlain have enormous experience here. They've run a lot of Spice C2 cars in the past, so they know what they're doing.
Once again, we see them continuing to work back on the track. That battle continues as one of the Porsches now has moved clear just a little bit of that battle. The Mercedes, the BMW, and another of the Porsches, though, continue, I mean, to duke it out. They have some serious racing right now, working through the last bit of the Porsche curves heading toward the Ford chicane in the pit area. But this battle is tremendous.
Well, it certainly is, and just to give you a rundown of the top 10 after the First couple of laps, you got Brundle, and then obviously you got Schneider in second place in Mercedes-Benz. Then you got that Boots and Martini battle. Then you got Jean-Marc Gounon. Suzuki's up there in the top 10, McNish and the rest of the guys, and John Nielsen, the best of the Nissans. He's running currently in 9th position.
There's a look at that battle, the Porsche, a little bit of room, then the Mercedes, the BMW, and the Porsche. And Sam, this just gets right back to what we were talking about earlier with these manufacturers. It is just a war out there for them early.
They have obviously decided to assign the role of hair to several of their drivers, an unusual number. Typically you'd see 2 or 3 cars battling it out for the lead at this stage, not 4 or 5. I mean, this is reflective of the intensity of this particular race. And I might say also, it's a bit of a surprise, I think, to see the Toyota perform just this well. They were embarrassed in qualifying. They had been the fastest in pre-qualifying, the fastest back on the first day of practice, and then Mercedes pulled out this magic lap and relegated Toyota to the outside of the front row. So they've fought back here now.
Yeah, but the fastest lap currently down to that lead car, the number 28 car, Martin Brundle, has put in a 3-minute 42.817. That's very quick indeed for the early going.
And we just saw the pass finally being made as the number 27 Toyota has gone around the BMW and picked up the position, has moved into 4th. That was a battle that had gone on for a few laps behind them. This battle continues. That's the 5th place Porsche, then 6th, 7th, and 8th. Tremendous racing. And David Murray, I know you're anxious to get back to the pits and get your head back into the race from down there, but before you go, this is a 24-hour race, and I want to ask you a question. There's not a lot of dark here, but the dark that is here is intense. What is your team strategy, your car strategy, once we get into the night?
Well, the strategy will be the same as it is in the daytime. We're just going to start with 3 drivers running rotations. So James Weaver will do 3 stints, about 45 or so minutes in each stint. So he'll be out for about 2 hours and 15 minutes. Then it'll be Pierre Raffinel and then myself. So we'll just continue those rotations through the night.
All right, David, quickly, the number 65 Rook Racing Motorsports Porsche, that was Andre Arl, I believe, that started that car, has slid off, and we talked a little bit about it. The gravel, with all the rain we've had, is probably a little bit more effective than it would be usually, very damp.
Yeah, I think so, and I tell you, it's amazing how quickly the Le Mans people get the cars off the course. Last night, I had a car off in the guardrail at Indianapolis corner. Came back the next lap, it was gone. And I've heard other stories with other people, the same thing. So it's amazing how quickly they get the cars off without affecting the race.
That Rook retirement is a major development here as far as the Viper story in GT2 is concerned, because the Rook team is their biggest rival. So already one of their biggest rivals out of action.
On board, we see the actual battle for 13th place there. So we've got the Ferrari actually running very well up the field. That's quite a surprise. So Bouillon having a great big go there in the early running.
Well, once again, I think we saw with the GT1s the pace in qualifying. I'm not convinced any of the World Sports cars, the Le Mans prototype cars, really thought they had a shot at the pole. Why should they waste the effort and the time to do that?
Exactly. That's what our point was. We knew that the sports cars were not going to have the overall pole. So instead of working on doing a fast lap, we've all been working on just simply a race setup, which, like Andrew said, the race is such a long race. You try to go so hard at the beginning, you have to think about it, because at midnight, you look back at the first hour of the race, you think, boy, that was a pretty silly hour, wasn't it? Although there is quite a bit of media value, as Sam was saying. So, you got to kind of play the odds, but without having the possibility of getting the overall pole, then you have to set your sights on having the race itself.
David, let me ask you one last quick question. When it comes time to sleep, what are your arrangements? Is it a trailer somewhere, or is it the Hilton? What's the story?
Well, they have a helicopter that flies us back to Paris. We have a Hilton. No,
sure you do. Sure you do.
No, we have some caravans in the back of the hospitality in the Porsche area, so we just go back there, and I've found in long races it's best to go and rest even when you're not tired, just so you get rest, so that when you are tired, it kind of helps to give you that extra boost over the hill.
David, it looked pretty splendid to me. I think they had potted plants, and there was a little fountain as well, wasn't there?
That was it. That part's true. That part's true.
David, I remember watching you when you were taking the helmet in the back of the car and begging for rides. What's it like for you to be driving for the Porsche factory at Le Mans?
Boy, that's the biggest question you could ask somebody. That's something that I keep continually thinking about constantly. I come here and see the ambiance, see how many people are here, how big an event it is, how extensive Porsche has gone to make sure they have the best of everything. They have 4 cars in the field. it's just phenomenal to sit there and look at that and see that I'm part of that, an integral part of it. And it just, you know, no matter what else happens in my life, this has been an experience that I'll never forget, and hopefully it won't stop here. But yeah, it's something that really does make you think about where you came from. And you're right, there was a lot of times, you know, sleep in the car and going, can I drive your car? And it was a lot of no's for maybe one in every 1,000 no's would be one yes. So it's quite a feat to be here now and see where everything is.
Yeah, then you got the big yes. Congratulations, David. It's great to have you as a part of this. The battle continues at the front. The top four are having a good one. And I have the feeling that when David goes back to that Porsche hospitality area for some rest, he pinches himself on the way. We'll be back.
In the corner of the BMW Motorsport Garage area, there is this digital readout giving the hours to go in the event and also the two cars, how many laps to go before they need to pit. This may be a reason that the BMWs are running so strong. It seems like they're getting very poor fuel mileage if they need to pit in 3 laps. Over here we see the fuel metering unit. Very important to recognize that the GT cars get a different tank capacity to the prototypes. Prototypes only get 80 liters, the GT cars get 100, and they carefully measure the fuel that's gone into the cars to make sure they get the full amount into the cars. Now, further down pit road, Davy Jones has a story on a GT2 car that has hit problems early.
A few moments ago, the number 73 Conrad GT2 Porsche came in smoking very heavily out of the back. They have now backed it into the garage. The driver, Tom Seltzer, has gotten out of the car, and they're underneath. You know, it appears to be a very serious problem, and they're trying desperately to get it back together, but they're not saying exactly what it is, but, you know, it's something in the bottom part of the motor.
Well, again, even though it's a 24-hour race, you don't want to have a problem of this magnitude early because you end up chasing your tail, it seems, for an awfully long time, and you can't drive to an endurance pace. You've got to just hustle. We've got a good, strong battle going on at the top of the field, Andrew. What is the top 10 at this stage?
Well, certainly we have 5 laps in the book. Martin Brundle is actually pulling away now. He's got a 8-second buffer over Bernd Schneider in the first of the Mercedes-Benz. Then we got the second of the Toyotas with Thierry Boutsen, and then the next Toyota is now up into 4th place, which is Suzuki. Then that BMW, that's dropped to 5th, that's Pierluigi Martini. Then we got the first of the Porsches with Alan McNish, and then the second of those BMWs, Tom Christensen at the wheel, the Dane who won last year. Well, he's moved up to 7th place in the number 1 car. And then number 36, Mark Gounon, he's 8th. Number 9, in 9th position, I should say, Jörg Müller. And then we got John Nielsen. And 11th and 12th, Jan Lammers and Camera Car. There you see it, right in our picture. Jean-Christophe Bouillon. They call him Jules.
And having a great run. They have now moved up into, well, they were battling for 10th, 11th, 12th. They're right in the mix. We're back on board. That look backward is one of the Nissans that they are battling with. And Sam, this is some great video. It gives you a real feel for this track.
Yeah, it certainly does. And again, a reminder that it is over 8 miles around. So a driver has to really master an awful lot. There are something like 18 right-hand turns, 11 left-hand turns, 8 straightaways, and they're all combined in such a way as to feel a little bit different one to another. Even the chicanes, which appear visually kind of the same, are very different. But this part of the track right here surprises everybody. They always talk about the Mulsanne Straight being the fastest part of the track. It's really this run from the town of Mulsanne west over to Arnage, and it's a very, very fast section of the track, deceptive and very dangerous.
Yeah, I think one of the drives of the race thus far really is that Ferrari of Bouillon. He's sharing that car with Vincenzo Sospiri.
Whoa.
Remember, whoa, what's happening here, Sam?
Well, the first awful close racing for a 24-hour race.
Yeah, that's a number 68 car driven by a trio of Frenchmen. Have you seen the livery on it?
Yeah, I certainly have. You know, one of the
very
rules,
French.
Are you going to describe it, Sam? Be brave.
No, I'll pass on that. One of the rules of racing in long-distance races is that you never, ever make contact with another car. I mean, that's just inexcusable. It happens, of course, a lot, but it is really dumb on the part of both drivers that get together.
That battle intense. I think they ran up at the back of that car and caught them by a bit of surprise, and it was a very sudden movement to avoid the contact that Sam was talking about.
Yeah, Bouillon at the wheel here of our camera car has gone past both these Nissans. Now, fingers crossed in that pitch, because in qualifying they blew a motor asunder. It blew completely apart, and this is the car that's run by Jean-Pierre Javois, who used to race for the Renault Grand Prix team. In fact, he was the man that scored the first ever victory for a turbocharged Grand Prix car. He's now in the pits and controlling things in, I'm told, a rather Gallic way.
Some tremendous experience, not only behind the wheel, as you're alluding to, but in the pits, in the team managers' positions, the engineers. And interestingly, the car now that Ferrari is chasing has, well, he's actually now gone around them. That was the number 31 Nissan, Jan Lammers, another tremendously experienced driver, and that number 5 Ferrari that we are on board with has made the pass. Made the pass and moved into top 10 position there. Right there in 10th place. Taking a look at your top 3 at this moment, the battle at the front continues. It is that number 28. That is the Toyota, and you can help, if you're watching at home, take a look. Well, we now go to the Ferrari. That is Wayne Taylor, and he is coming into the pits only 25 minutes thereabouts into this one. That would surprise me. That's a bit early. And Davy Jones?
It is a bit surprising that Wayne Taylor is already in, but it does seem like a planned, scheduled pit stop. You know, the engine switched off. They have to first put in the fuel. They're not allowed to make any changes to the car until the fuel is completed. Then they can go ahead and make the tire change. They will most unlikely that Wayne Taylor is going to stay in the car. And as it's been the past couple of years, it seems like the first driver generally stays out for 3 stints. But, you know, everything seems to be just fine on the Ferrari here. It's just a scheduled stop.
Well, Davey, I almost wonder, I talked to a couple of drivers in the open top World Sports Cars that said they were hoping to get 12 laps, but they were going to run 10 or 11 in the first stint, get in and get a serious measurement of fuel consumption and the like. I wonder if that's what they're doing with this stop, just trying to get an idea of where they're running.
Well, it's always best just to, you know, to play it on the safe side. You know, obviously on the opening laps, you're burning up a bit more fuel, you're a bit more racy, and you haven't settled down into that rhythm yet. So certainly I'm sure that they're, you know, they're doing everything as far as, you know, getting the accurate fuel measurements, and you know, now he's away.
And once again, accuracy crucial. Keep in mind, as we said, this track over 8 miles in length, and if you run out of gas, it's very tough to coast in, and if you stop for the duration of the race. Those are the rules here at Le Mans.
Also, they have some fascinating rules about what you can do mechanically out on the course. And it mostly consists of fix it yourself, buddy, with any tools you might have and parts you might have taken along with you.
Andrew, one of the big surprises, actually, I've just been checking out the monitors here, is the Vipers are not doing very well right now. There's 3 Porsches, first, second, and third in GT2. We really didn't expect that.
No,
and you heard it. I'm sorry, Sam.
If you look at the fastest lap, Andrew, done by a Viper, it's 4:12, which is 12 seconds off of what their fastest car qualified at. I think we're seeing team tactics at work. They're running way off their pace.
And to give you an idea of the pace, we saw those 3-minute 35 laps in qualifying. The elite Toyota's lapping around 4 minutes. We'll be back with more here at Le Mans in just a minute. Welcome back to Le Mans, your leader, the number 28 Toyota GT1. Expectations are that car might be making a turn into the pit road in fairly short order. There is the second place machine, the beautiful Mercedes. Bernd Schneider behind the wheel. He led early, but Martin Brundle got around him in the Toyota, and watching them down through the turns into the chicane. And look, there's the crew. They are ready to go. They indeed expect that machine in very soon. Interestingly, the GT1 cars were thinking they could easily get 12 laps on their load of fuel, 100 liters or about 25 gallons. The Le Mans prototype cars are hoping to maybe get 12. They have 80 liters or about 21.5 gallons. That's a big difference.
It is a big difference. Interestingly, they're actually on lap number 8 thus far, and the first pit stop really is not one to judge by. Let the race get into the second hour, and then we'll feel the real way that those pit stops are spacing out, and it's very, very significant indeed. But Toyota, I should say, put the teeth back in and made a very good start to the race. Now that's a little Deborah there. It's in a class of its own. It's in a Le Mans class, which is called LMP2, and it's the only one in the race.
If you're watching the field summary, you can watch as well that Toyota. That turn that they just worked is what is the famous corner called Indianapolis, and now into the slowest corner on the track. That is Arnage. Sam, you were talking about it.
They'll actually use first gear there at Arnage and nowhere else around the entire circuit. The other turns are all second gear turns.
The number 10 Ferrari making its way down pit lane, the Pellet Pen machine, and that was started by Michel Fert, and it is down in the pits.
I knew you'd do this. We never went through those pronunciations, did we? Ferte. And he's the owner of the car also, and he lives quite locally here, so he's a bit of a local hero, and that's an older Ferrari than the other three in the race. Very good guy on sponsorship, incidentally.
Is the color blue A?
Maybe.
Toyota just working by that Viper that had made a stop, and you can see that even though some of these GT2 cars fairly quick in a straight line, they just don't compare. And let's see, the Toyota, nope, opting to apparently stay out one more time. And continues on. It was interesting, Sam. I was talking to David Donahue, and the top speeds they were seeing on the Mulsanne for the GT1 cars were about 215 miles an hour. David Donahue told me there are 5 spots on the track where the Vipers hit 190 miles an hour.
Yeah, they really have that enormous power. But the GT1 cars, particularly the Toyota here, benefit from something the Viper doesn't have, which is extremely low drag. That body work that you see, here's the BMW coming into the pits, but the
both of them
body work of the Toyota is designed to cut through the air, not to generate a lot of downforce. The BMW, the same thing. Notice that the open cockpit here of the BMW, usually a very high drag situation, but they've configured it, the engineers have, in such a way that it is not a very high drag car at all here.
Crucial to be slippery at this track. Both BMWs are in. Calvin?
Yes, I'm here, and they basically came in a little bit early, Greg. It seemed like they were a lap short of their lap count early in the running here. The number 2 car is in, Pierluigi Martini. As you can see here at Le Mans, no work may be done, as Davey said, until all of the fuel in. And you can see that the tires are put on these little stands so they're easily accessible to the mechanics. Now they're going to just send him, it looks like, no tire change. Well, right behind him, Tom Christensen, last year's Le Mans winner, sits in his number 1 machine. Strange to bring the cars in so close together. A little bit of confusion. He's trying to get the engine fired back up. They're in radio communication with Tom. The engine fires, and the number 1 machine is out of here. He's delayed once again. Now he's gone.
He is out, and there was a bit of confusion down there. And the fact that they're not changing tires, with the rain that we had, the track perhaps not quite as abrasive, perhaps, as usual, giving a little extra life to the tires. One of the Panos is in. That is the number 45 Panos, and David Jones is there.
David Bradford just came in for a quick stop. He just took on a splash of fuel and is straight back out. And same with the number 7 Yost Porsche. They just come in, took on a splash of fuel, and went straight out. No driver change, no tire change.
Getting great life out of the tires here.
Yeah, well, as you guys said, the track is not abrasive at all, and you should look for a pace that does not punish the car. Either the gearbox, which is probably the weakest link in most Le Mans cars, particularly now with some of the sequential shifts, the temptation is to shift it much too fast. You have to really watch that. Probably next come the brakes, and finally the tires and fuel.
Here out front, the Toyotas now have moved to 1st and 2nd places. You may just have seen it on the graphic. And there is a Toyota 4th also with a Guri Suzuki, another Grand Prix driver at the wheel. So Toyota 1, 2 and 4. And the best Porsche now, Alan McNish, has moved up to 5th position.
This does a great deal of credit to Derek Warwick, don't you think? Because he has been a real force there in the Toyota team.
Martin Brundle.
Martin Brundle, I'm sorry, geez.
I mix those up, actually.
Yeah,
They're very parallel careers.
Thank you so much, Martin Brundle. And I mean, they have listened to him as a driver of great wisdom, and he was with the Nissan team last year. That was unsatisfactory. He jumped ship there. He had several other big offers, and he took Toyota and has really made the most of it. Here comes one right now.
I believe that's the lead car, Andrew, making its way down into the pits.
Yes, no, I think that might be the Suzuki car. We just check it out. Yeah, no, it's the number 28 car, and Calvin is there.
Okay, well, Martin Brundle will bring the number 28 car in. Remember, it's a 60-kilometer speed restriction down there, which is about 38 miles an hour, so it really takes an eternity to get these cars back to the pits. You can see there's a long orange rope being brought out to try and clear the crowd to make it an easy access for Martin to get into his pit stall. You can see the tires are on these little stands there so the mechanics can easily reach them. First thing happens is the engine is shut off. The 2 refuelers go to work. There's then a maximum of 4 mechanics allowed to work on the car. They're allowed 2 wheel guns, 4 mechanics only. It's not like Grand Prix racing where you have a flood of people working on the car at the same time. And if you do make a tire change, remember, it really extends these pit stops. Typically, you're doing all the work at the same time. If they decide to change tires, which it looks like they will, this car is running on Michelin's. They're going to go to get the car in the air. They'll then go change the fronts. Meanwhile, Martin fires it up. They've obviously checked the tires out, and he's out of here. Good pit stop. All the 3 Toyotas are on a different pit strategy. It looks like the Boutsen car has another couple of laps left, and then the number 27 machine should be in and around 4. So good lap potential on the number 27 machine.
And Brundle takes the number 28 back out into the chicane, leading into the approach to the Dunlap Bridge, the S's, the Tertre Rouge, and Mulsanne. The corners are legendary. We'll be back. Welcome back to Le Mans. The action battle continues, of course, as it will for an awfully long time, over 23 hours yet remaining. And there's a great look, the long shot down the Mulsanne, approaching the first of the chicanes, the right-hander. And this is where perhaps the highest speeds are seen on this track. And what we're watching now are the 2 Yost Porsches. They are part of the factory Porsche effort this year, but this team, these 2 cars are still run by Yost.
Yes, they certainly are. Reinhold's in the pits there, and we've got both of these cars having made a pit stop. One now is in 12th position, the other one's way down in 20th. So they've got a bit of work to do if they're going to make it 3 years out of 3.
Here's the Martin Brundle Toyota trying to work its way through some traffic after its pit stop. You see one of the Vipers directly ahead. It's an interesting comparison in acceleration. The Vipers can hold up under acceleration against the GT cars, but not in top speed. And there you see the top speed starting to play a part as the Toyota approaches the Porsche curves. Here's the second place car, Greg.
Making its way down into the pits, and that is Thierry Boutsen behind the wheel. Calvin.
Thierry brings his car in, got a wide sweep in here. He should be under good control here as he hits the marks, gets the car stopped, engine is off. They immediately clip into the back end here with a refueling nozzle. There's a vent on one side and the refueling on the other. That's why you need the 2 nozzles connected at the same time, obviously. And it'll be interesting to see if they change the Michelins on this car or they use the same strategy they use with Brundle's car and just get him back on track. Obviously, these tire changes cost valuable seconds, and to win this event, the key is to be out on the racetrack as much as possible. It looks like a routine stop, no panic in anyone's face right now. Gets the thumbs up from the back, refire the engine. Thierry stalls it momentarily, fires it back up, he's out of his pit.
Yeah, well, of course, while these Toyotas have been making their early pit stops, yes, they were the hares, but we have a new leader, and that is Bernd Schneider. He has done 10 laps, and of course the Porsches haven't stopped yet. And maybe we're just seeing some of these tactics starting to play out early. And perhaps Toyota have the speed, but possibly, Sam, they don't have the fuel consumption.
Or, so far, are afraid to take a risk. They have not done as much testing as the other teams, have no experience here. Remember, I mean, this is their first shot at Le Mans, so it's a very tricky thing. They do have a good place for people to sleep back there, so they're optimistic they'll get as far as the night.
We have a report, one of the Vipers also down in pit lane as we're watching Bernd Schneider hustling that beautiful Mercedes CLK LM, and the key there is LM. This is in many ways a very new car, and one of the Panos is in. That is the independent effort, if you will, of Don Panos, powered by a huge 6-liter V8 Ford engine. A great sound here at Le Mans.
Well, it's the loudest of all the cars. Now, the Mercedes also has a V8 engine, but somehow the Panos will just blow your eardrums. We were at that cafe at the Unandieres, and I mean, it went by and the glass moved in the windows.
Yeah, but it's got a side exhaust. I think that's the key to it.
Yeah, it may be, but boy, it's got a big thumper of an engine too.
Once again, getting waved out, no tire changes. We have seen that pretty much on Mans here. Nobody is changing tires.
Yeah, that was the number 44 car. As we look now at the leader, Bernd Schneider, and he has a lead of something like 4 seconds. Certainly when it passed us last, it was 4 seconds. It may have opened out. But the 44 car is run by the Dams team, and they run that car in the FIA Championship. And we've also got the famous Tony Dow, who masterminded some of the great TWR successes. He's running a different Panos, which is run by literally Panos USA, and that's the car which normally will race in the United States, and of course is winning sports car races there.
That car you just saw coming out of the pits, one of the Courage, there's a number of them here. A couple Nissan powered, a couple Porsche powered, one of the older cars. They've got the newest model here as well.
You don't get much more local than Courage, because looking out the booth, I can actually see their factory where they build those cars. They've been in Le Mans a long time. Yves Courage is the man behind that. He's desperately tried to win. Now remember, that's the team that Andretti was linked with for a couple of years. It's very sad not to see Mario and Michael here. They were here last year, but of course we've got date clashes this year. So I think it's undone business for Mario Andretti, and I'd like to see him back, and maybe next year could be in a Mercedes-Benz, like this one is leading right here, the number 35 car. You see the yellow mirrors there that got colour coding on all these cars, and in fact, if you look just on the left-hand side, you'll see a dark patch. There's a bright yellow light in there, so we can recognise it at night.
That's not just for the spectator, and of course they're always thinking about the announcers in the TV booth, no doubt, but the crews, it helps them quick recognition as well when it does get dark here. And Schneider, he is hammering the curves. He is still working that car. We've got a lot of action down in pit lane. We're getting into that window now when we should start seeing cars coming in rather intensely. In fact, now the number 27 Toyota making its way into the pits and is driven by Tsuchiya, and that machine coming in.
They, of course, have a very low speed limit in the pits. That's why you see them come literally creeping down the pits. It's for safety, and thank goodness, too, because with so many people in the pits here, it would be very dangerous if the cars were allowed to come fast.
Truly amazing how busy the pit lane is here, and of course it is good reason for having that pit lane speed limit entered.
Yeah, we're going to tick off the mistakes we made in the 24 hours. I said it was a Guri Suzuki. Of course, it's a different car. That's Toshio Suzuki. In Japan, there's about 5 Suzukis that race. That's just a fool us commentator. Toshio Suzuki will be driving that car later.
Calvin Fish is down there now. Calvin?
Well, actually, we're standing by in the Viper pit, but meanwhile, that number 27 machine, it looks like another routine stop for the Toyota in the background there. But meanwhile, one of the GT2 Vipers is coming in. Mark Duez looks like he'll be getting in this machine. I believe it is the number 50, which should be currently driven by the Austrian Carl Wendlinger, the ex-Formula 1 driver coming back from injury all those years ago. Carl will be getting out, Mark Duez getting in. Interesting that the Vipers have shown such prodigious speed in qualifying, yet we're seeing the Porsches lead that category right now. So obviously strategy comes into play. These guys were fast last year, couldn't last. They're obviously playing a different ball game this year, trying to make these cars last. But a lot of speed with the cars. The Michelin tire engineers go to work checking out the tire temperatures. Also the brake people go to work. They're allowed outside assist, but while the car is actually being fueled as it just was, none of the actual mechanics on the team can touch it. You're allowed tire technicians and things like that to check for safety, but no actual maintenance repair. Meanwhile, Mark is struggling to get the car refired. Heat built up in the car, the Viper is fired up, and Mark Duez, the Belgian, is out of here.
Calvin, a quick question. We're seeing the Porsches leading, but these Vipers are so powerful. The V10 engine makes a lot more horsepower than the Porsches. As a consequence, they run a bit more weight. I would suspect they're very concerned about wear on brakes and tires and the like.
They certainly are. I spoke to David Donahue, though, and he said even though this car has massive torque, the way the engine is mapped out, the car is very easy to drive. It just puts the power down very effectively. It doesn't come in with a big bang, and obviously that helps out the driveline on these type of cars in a 24-hour race.
Meanwhile, Calvin, the GT2 category is being led by an old Grand Prix favourite of mine, Jean-Pierre Jumper Jarrier, as they called him, who raced for Lotus, some of you may remember, even led Grand Prix for Arrows. Look, eons ago, must have been 20-odd years ago, he's never stopped racing. He's raced Porsches for 10 or 15 years, and he's right out there putting some very quick times in.
Watching the second-place Mercedes of Jean-Marc Gounod, he is continuing to run very strong, makes the exit of Arnage, and now has that long, fast run down toward the Porsche curves. We'll be back with more of our coverage at Le Mans right after this. Welcome back to Le Mans. There is the car, number 35 Mercedes of Schneider, just exiting the pits. It was a quick stop. However, was it too long? Was the number 36 team machine able to take over the lead? In the third place car, number 25, one of the Porsche GT1s just completing the stop. Jörg Müller, the driver. These stops coming frequently and getting done in a big hurry right now.
Yeah, but the big news is that, Greg, they put 12 laps in the Mercedes, and so did the Porsche. So parity there. Just waiting to see now whether the number 36 guy is actually going to squeeze 13 laps out of his first stint, and that would be big news.
Big news indeed. They were talking about if they could get 13 laps, the GT1 machines could get 13 laps, it would be huge. In a sense, seal the fate of a GT1 versus the LMPs. There is the 6th place Nissan, the number 33 entry, and that one was started by Kageyama. And doesn't look like we're going to see a driver's change in that one either. So, per plan, really, they're going for multiple stints at the beginning.
Yeah, 2 Kageyama brothers, incidentally, and they both race in Japanese Formula Nippon, which is a very, very successful feeder series to actually Grand Prix racing.
Well, they're taking some time. They're really working the windshield over.
That's basically a 1997 and a half car. It's a 97 chassis with some of the 98 updates. It's actually run by a Japanese team, and there's a very hot young driver who'll take that over a little later called Motoyama. More of him later.
Perhaps we can updates is watch the tail of that car. It has been elongated into the Le Mans sweeping end versus the rather cutoff end that they ran last year. We'll be back with more from right after this. Welcome back to Le Mans. The magic number was 13. It is in, and Davy Jones is there. Davy?
We're down here in the 36 Mercedes pit. You know, just same as Bernd Schneider, they just seem to be putting fuel in the car. They have the tires that they just brought out of the tire warmers just in case. They're scanning the tires as they're putting fuel in to make sure that the tread wear is not down far enough to where they need to change. And Jean-Marc Giraud is off. Very quick.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Davey, a very quick stop indeed. They are apparently very happy with what's going on, and they have to be jubilant, Andrew. They got 13 laps.
They probably knew well before the race they could get 13 laps, but nobody else knew it. So now they've played their hand, and I should think there'll be some furious dialing into some computers up and down the pit road now.
That number 28 Toyota that you're watching should be back in the lead. Brundle, after all the exchanges here in the pit work. Oh, excuse me, that was the 27 machine.
Back in 6th place.
Yeah, what we need to do is see all these pit stops run their course, and then we'll get a feel for what's happening. Right now, it's still changing around a lot. And of course, as the race wears on, then it gets much more predictable. But right now, we never really expected one of those Mercs to go 13 laps, and well, the Silver Arrows are really charging here. Actually, just before we went into the break, we saw 3 men looking over a wall or looking out of their hospitality suite. In the middle of those was the architect of all that, Norbert Haug. Of course, you see him regularly in North America. But what a fantastic program Mercedes-Benz have put together this year.
The remarkable part of that program is that new car, the LM, they put in an 8-cylinder, a V8 instead of running the V12. They won the FIA championship with. They've done massive changes as a result to the car, shortened it, lightened it, lower center. I mean, the car is a much different beast right now, and it was completed in 120 days from conception to pre-qualifying.
Mercedes, of course, has a long history of doing things just like that. Back in the pre-war, a race was announced in Tripoli with a different set of rules altogether. Mercedes, in about 100 days, built an entirely new Grand Prix car for that thing and won that. So they're used to mobilizing all of their energies on very short notice.
And Sam, back in the 50s, you remember they built that transporter which did 100 miles an hour to get the cars to the racetracks quicker, and that was magnificent.
Wasn't that the greatest thing? An open transporter with the car strapped to the back of it, screaming down the Autobahn at over 100 miles an hour.
Well, some screaming down the straight towards the Porsche curves now, as we see that Toyota really getting in amongst the lap cars. You just caught our first glimpse of a McLaren BMW. It was the Dr. Thomas Bashir car. And remember, even last year, a McLaren BMW was a potential winner. 3 years ago, you know, they won at their debut, and all of a sudden, their history, they're almost museum pieces. It's astounding the quickness and speed of the progress here in GT racing right now.
But also, wouldn't you say, Andrew, the subtle shift of rules? I mean, I think that's been very hard on the series.
Yeah, I mean, we just see Bashir's car now. Thomas Bashir also has a McLaren F1, which he drives to work in. He is apparently the second richest man in Germany. He's a banker, and he drives to work in a McLaren, and he races one. I think that's great.
Well, and that brings up a piece of issue, doesn't it? How many people are driving to work or just driving on the road in a Toyota, in a Nissan, in a Mercedes? That is the difference, really, in the terms of the McLaren was designed first as a supercar, yes, but a street car.
Don't blame the manufacturers, though. A door was left open in the regulations, so that really enabled them to do this and develop the cars.
Oh, it wasn't blaming the manufacturers. What they've done is glorious indeed and great to see. Once again, on board with the Ferrari. We'll be back. Welcome back to Le Mans. The Mercedes just going around Andrew. the Toyota in tow.
I'm going to tell you what's on that car later on. That Mercedes is the meat in a Toyota sandwich. We're looking at the second place battle there. In fact, Martin Brundle has gone back into the lead, so after the pit stops, it all worked itself out, just like the early going. So Martin Brundle currently leading, and here we've got a situation with Nick Ham getting in.
Well, Franz Conrad has jumped out. A little bit of a mess up there with the radio. Get that out of the way before Nick Ham gets in. Interesting driver lineup here. Larry Schumacher won the GT2 championship in the States last year, narrowly beating Franz Conrad. They're all driving together here at Le Mans, so if you can join them. But meanwhile, this car should be very strong here this weekend. They're running Dunlops. There's 6 different tire manufacturers in the battle here at Le Mans. Dunlop typically supplies chance of victory there. Franz Conrad runs his own team, narrowly missed out on qualifying a prototype car. He tried to qualify a prototype car, just missed out by like 0.08 of a second in pre-qualifying, so he then switched his driving duties over to this team car, and one guy had to like move aside, and it's going to be Nick, Larry and Franz, so they have a good shot at victory in this.
Conrad Motorsports has won a number of endurance races. They've been successful in the 1000K type of FIA race, and they've won certainly in the States very strongly. This is a team finish.
Absolutely right, and Franz has got a tremendous history. He's raced Jaguar here in the past for the factory team. That car, before it came into the pits, was actually in second place in the Spa, but that's still currently being led by, well, now being led actually by the number 64 car, which has got the only woman in the race, Claudia Hurtgen. Well, there's another woman in the race, and it's on the car we have about yet. You know, we'll go into that later.
Claudia started that number 64 machine, and it has been a great run. We watch as now Nick Ham behind the wheel of the number 70 Conrad easing its way, and that is the key here. Getting very slow speeds down that pit lane wisely, but now back out, able to get on the throttle and go, and has rejoined the track. And we just saw the tail end there of a little incident, and it was one of the BMWs getting underneath another car, and one of them went spinning, but the BMW apparently got away with it. There is the Ferrari that we've been enjoying, those onboard shots, especially the ones going toward the back. We've really been enjoying those shots, and that car continues to put up a pretty good run, finds itself.
Men faced, all of them, is that they just have too much downforce. It's a fairly old car, does not reflect the latest trend in aerodynamics and fuel usage. A great car, of course, more of a requirement, and of course for the short U.S. circuits. But here at Le Mans, they've been cutting out the some of the tunnels underneath the car, trimming the wing, doing everything they possibly.
There it comes, watch it here, and the BMW thought he had a clear path by, and not so. Watch, right there, a little nudge, and you had talked earlier about you in this type of a race, the BMW was 9th, and that was enough when the car in front's going around.
They were lucky to get away with that, Andrew.
Yeah, but now you see that's the Frank Freon car, the Cougar, which has got all the Japanese flowers over it. And you see all of a sudden his path is blocked. He has to really put on the binders there and virtually stop. Obviously, we're in slow-mo now, but he lost quite a few seconds there. Silly little incident, really.
Frank Freon, of course, took a crack at Indianapolis a few years ago. I thought he was really on his way to being things have not worked out for him.
Now the car is coming to the pits. That's also different. Oh, you see there's damage to it and water coming out. Yep.
That's probably water out of the radiator there, and obviously that's right into the garage. They know it's serious. Get it out of pit lane, out of the way, let the crew work on it in a relative safety and be able to get to it. So Freon obviously going to be a little bit frustrated at this point. The crew goes to work on that machine. We'll be back for more from Le Mans right in a moment. Don't go away. Simply a huge racing extravaganza, Speed Weekend International, here on Speedvision.
On screen here you see Toyota has just moved up to second place, working really hard. Bernd Schneider, but he couldn't hold off the second Toyota. So Martin Brundle now is actually 20 seconds ahead from the second Toyota. That's Thierry Boutsen at the wheel, always drove for Porsche in these races. And then, of course, we got Bernd Schneider. And then you got to watch them, Porsche now, Adam Ignition.
Fourth spot, about 30 seconds back, and one of the BMWs back into the pits, and it would appear to be fairly routine. Calvin?
Well, Tom Christensen has brought it. Actually, it's Pierluigi Martini is in the number 2 machine, and these guys don't seem to be getting good fuel mileage, as is Wayne Taylor. Wayne Taylor just pitted the number 12 Ferrari, and these guys are basically first in on 2 stops now, so this is not good news for these 2 teams. They've obviously got good pace, but there has been contact here on the left side of the car. There's been wheel-to-wheel contact, as you can see. They're now changing the tires there. They're putting a new set of Michelins on, new set of scuffs. Pierluigi Martini is staying behind the wheel. No driver change here. But other than that, doesn't seem to be too much damage to the car. However, there is a problem over on the right side. Let's see if we can get over to that side. There's a problem on the right side of the car. That means that the nose is coming off of the car. So obviously, that skirmish on track has done considerable damage somewhere. They're now bringing out a fresh nose piece from the garage area. And the trouble is, when you damage this bodywork, sometimes it's very hard to get the fasteners undone. They get dislodged. And more importantly, when you put a fresh piece on, it's very hard for that to match up also. So we'll see what happens here. Even though this is a brand new car, it doesn't look like it's the fastest piece of bodywork to get off. Typically they try and design these things so they can get them off in a hurry, and this is obviously not happening right now.
Calvin,
valuable seconds being lost.
Calvin, get your camera in there, because all through qualifying, every time they took that nose off, they covered the front suspension up so we couldn't see it.
Well, we're right in there, Andrew, and as you know, this car actually ducts the air in underneath. They call it the vacuum cleaner because the air gets ducked in underneath the car, and that's how it creates its downforce. But a lot of damage here, not dissimilar to the situation we saw last year with the BMW pit with the Schnitzer crew. You recall, J.J. Leto had a big off, damaged a very similar piece to the front end of that car. So same pits and same team and same problem, front end damage on one of their leading cars.
Yeah, it appears they have to pull that entire front clip off. Air management on this car, the way it is designed, is so crucial that apparently a little bit of damage can be absolutely devastating to how this car works.
Look at the packaging of the suspension system. Obviously that pull rod system up on top of where the tunnels must be. I think we're looking at some extremely advanced technology courtesy of the Williams team.
Yes, they don't want us to see it. Just a quick mention there, Sam, looking at what they were doing. I think they had a problem with the steering arm as well, because I saw guys going in with spanners there. So I think you've got the problem with the nose. I think it's also bent the steering arm. That car was actually lying in 6th position, so it was going strongly. And as I said at the top of the show, I thought they were going to go really well and be the big surprise that maybe I'm going to have to rethink that situation. See, they're the guys working away, and I'm pretty sure they're changing the steering arm.
Well, this was a driver error situation, and it's really a shame, you know. I mean, it wrecks months and months of work, hundreds of, well, millions of dollars worth to have a setback like this because of getting too close to another car, Calvin.
Seems very strange that they didn't take the front wheels off. The car's up in the air, and they are really struggling to get the wrenches inside there in the front suspension and get some of these fasteners undone. And the wheels are really in the way here, so I'm surprised they didn't just knock these wheels off right quick and give themselves a little bit more room. But it does look like the new piece is lining up, and once this thing is on, it should be okay. I mean, as long as the fasteners are lined up, you can see the strength of this carbon fiber piece. The guy's actually standing on the front end, trying to get it so that the other mechanic can go to work and try and get the bolt threaded in on that right-hand front corner. But this is something you're not looking for. A 24-hour race to make contact in the first hour is something that the team management will not be very happy about. I'm not saying it was Martini's fault, but as you can see, they're now actually undoing this side, trying to give a little bit more leeway to the other side, try and get that bolt started on the other side before tightening this one up. But a lot of seconds being lost here in the pits, guys.
And of course, Calvin, another problem for the team is that they're just not that used to the car yet. You know, in 6 months they might do an operation like this in half the time.
We just saw it. Two of the crew members looked, they didn't have a part they needed, ran into the garage. So I think you're absolutely right. They are still struggling to figure out how to do this really effectively.
A little bit of good news, though. The sister car, the #1 car, has just moved up into 5th position. That's the car with Christensen at the wheel. But Pierluigi Martini, enormously experienced, drove many, many Grand Prix. Never in a top team, but he's a good little driver. His brother is an up-and-coming driver, incidentally.
And by the way, while we watch the action in the BMW pit, I want to remind you, 2 of the key Ferraris have pitted. Wayne Taylor and the Doyle Racing machine has pitted, as has our camera car, #5, with Jean-Christophe Bouillon behind the wheel. We'll be back at Le Mans. Hopefully the BMWs will be out on track. Welcome back to Le Mans. You're watching the leader, that is Martin Brundle, staying in his midst of his second stint, and just now turning onto Tartrouge, and onto that longest, really it's the longest section now of the Mulsanne, isn't it? Now that they put the chicanes in the first stretch up to chicane 1.
Down to the first chicane, and as you can see too, it is a little bit downhill. Then there's this little rise just before the chicane itself. The cafe that we visited is just off on the left. Now, if you see the headlights on the cars, don't think that dusk is falling here. It's 3 o'clock in the afternoon. It will not be dark until 10 o'clock at night. So we have, 7 hours of at least partial daylight. The reason the leaders have their lights on is to get the slower cars out of the way.
Traffic management, as it were, and you will start to run in on them. That is the #10 Ferrari running in the World Sports Car category, and look how quick that Toyota just pulls out, zaps by. That is in the run down to the second chicane, gets alongside, and this is the #28 machine. Brundle behind the wheel, and watch right here, Sam. We noticed this just a moment ago. Look at the back.
Well, there's a little smoke there at Arnage. Now, the team has these little boxes for sleeping in, all set up, 2 stories worth of them and everything. I wonder if they will need them tonight. I just wonder. Toyota's making a marvelous first impression, but if you study the pit stops and everything, Mercedes really has a whip hand right now, Andrew.
Yeah, still problems here with the Pierluigi Martini car. They've gone to work on the front again. Looks as if it was going out. The other car, the #1 car, of course, that's made a routine stop, but now it's having to be pushed back, and Calvin's right down there.
Well, a bit of a problem for Christensen there. He came in for a routine stop. Obviously, the Martini car, they're still working on the front end. Those fasteners will just not line up. And with the speed and the downforce that's created on these cars, they can't afford to have the front bodywork fly off on the Martini car. But what happened there, as you can see, Christensen tried to leave his pit stall. The mechanics had to push it up. Wasn't a big problem. Probably lost a couple of seconds.
Well, we're seeing an indication, I think, of the newness, as you pointed out, Sam, of this team. It was a great observation. You can test, you can develop, you can do all that, but generally in testing, you don't bring a car in with a corner dinged up that needs immediate attention in a race sort of tense situation, and they're learning a valuable lesson right now, I suspect.
Yeah, and cars like this don't have just conventional bodies that you just drop over the wheels and screw on. I mean, they're very complexly interwoven with the aerodynamics.
Just going back to that situation where we saw that Toyota there at Arnage with that smoke coming out of the back, and I just wonder if that's coming not from the engine but the gearbox. There was a rumour going around the paddock that they did have a major problem with gearboxes. When we talked to Toyota about it, so it's only a little problem. There was one car, it had a different differential to the others. We're not worried about it, but I think maybe we're getting a bit of the old PR flack, and there could be a problem. It could be the Achilles heel of those cars. They have done a lot of testing, not as much testing as the Nissans. Remember, coming into this race, as everybody drove here, everybody is saying the car to beat is the Nissan. We haven't seen much of them so far. We haven't talked much about them, but they are in the top 10. Certainly one of the cars is in the top 10.
And the Nissan, of course, keep in mind, they had a lot of problem with the gearbox in their debut last year. That does indeed seem to be a factor, particularly for a new effort. With the chicanes in particular, that's a lot more down changes and up changes, and the acceleration hard on driveline components. It can take a tremendous toll, and this may be an educational process for Toyota.
Well, I'm sure there isn't a team here that doesn't worry about their gearboxes. Even the 911 Porsches and GT2 had some problems in practice with their gearbox, their new sequential change gearbox, and the GT1 Works Porsches have had some problems fitted. Oh, look at this.
Big problems for the Mercedes. That is Schneider crawling down the track. That is just past pit out. He is pulling into pit out. Now the question is, since he's met it, can he get, if he rolls back into pit lane, can he then be assisted and be helped?
I don't believe you're allowed to roll backwards.
Let's go down to Calvin.
Okay, well, Bernd Schneider is sitting at pit out right now. It's going to be interesting to see what the rules allow, whether they can actually back into pit lane, or once he's past the pit entrance, whether he's got to get all the way around. Obviously, a big problem with the car. It does look like there's enough room. Martini now is out of the BMW pit, but he's got to pull back in. Very dangerous there, very high-speed part of the track. You just saw the Toyota go by. We're going to try and get a little closer here, guys, so come back to us.
We will. Interestingly, you can see Schneider wanting nothing more than to roll back into the pit lane, and the marshals stopping him and pushing him further out the pits. Getting instruction now. I bet he's fuming inside that cockpit.
I'd be very surprised if Le Mans regulations allowed a car to go backwards any length.
No, you can push the car out of a dangerous position, and it might just have I just wonder if that's a transmission problem there. Transmissions were the talk of qualifying. It is a very tough race on the drivetrains here, and those marshals pushing the car out there, well, something is it could of course be an electronic problem.
But talking about transmission and drivetrain, gentlemen, we were talking, well, let's go back right down to Calvin. He's there. Calvin?
Okay, well, they're pushing him right to the very end. There is a little access road here. Be interesting to see if Bernd gets out of the car, and then obviously if he'll be willing to talk to us, but I'm sure he's in radio communication with his team. And it wouldn't surprise me to see a flurry of activity here shortly, whilst they get the Mercedes crew down here, but there is oil coming out of the back end of the car as they bring it around. Not a big pull, but certainly some problem there in the driveline.
Well, as we were talking about a number of times, when we watch him go through some of these turns, he was really up on the curbing, and that is very hard on driveline components. Davy Jones now standing by with Yost.
Yes, both Yost cars came in together at the same time, and it appears that James Weaver's going to stay in for a third stint. No tire change, fuel only. But Michele Alboreto has departed out of the car. Stefan Johansson is going in, and they are going to change tires.
Again, Johansson now behind the wheel, and Weaver, as Murray told us when he was up here, they intended James to do 3 stints and start replacing, so obviously they're staggering things just a little bit, working on getting Johansson buckled in. Very distinctive helmet. Now back at the site of the Mercedes problem for the number 35 entry, and the door is up. Let's see if Schneider steps out, Andrew.
I would say that this car is history, to be honest. You see that sort of thing. They can't crawl it back to the pits. They can't push it back there. The only person allowed to work on that car is the driver, and Schneider is reasonably technically minded. He might be able to change the ignition box or something, and we'll try and check out what's happening. Davey, what can you... Calvin, what can you see down there?
Well, unfortunately, the officials won't let us any closer to the cockpit area of the car. As you said, the door is up. There's a very small trail of oil coming from the right side of the car. I cannot see any damage, and it looks like it may be coming from an oil cooler or something in the side pod area of the car, but Schneider's obviously still talking to his team. They're trying to make a decision on what to do, as Andrew said, and Schneider's getting out now. It looks like he's asking the officials whether they can push the car back, and it could be over for this Mercedes, one of the favourites in this race. This is big news in the early going.
Yeah, it certainly is, Calvin. When it got to you, was the engine actually running? Let's go back down to Yost with Davey.
Yes, they got the tail cover off the back of the car, and they appear to be checking all the boost fittings. Like perhaps he might have a problem with the boost, but they checked it all. The tail cover's going back on. They're very anxiously trying to get them going. And at the same time, there seems to be a little bit of an overflow leak coming out of the back, which I don't think it's anything that they're really alarmed about at the moment. But what's interesting is that they changed all 4 tires. And normally in the past, you tend to stay on the same compound tire for at least 3 stints. So it appears to me that they're running a softer Goodyear.
And the Yost machine back out. Johansson behind the wheel. But let's go right back down to Calvin. Finish, Cal.
Bernd, what happened out there? The car was running so strong, and then suddenly you pull.
I'm not quite sure. The rear and suddenly was no more power. I don't know. Then I switched off the engine.
The officials would not let you bring the car back to the pit area. It has to go all the way around the track. Is that correct? They will not let you back the car up for work to the car?
That's right. The car parked here. Finished.
Okay, well, it looks like the day is over for Bernd Schneider, and a big upset here early.
Tremendous upset, and the frustration for Schneider. I mean, for a minute there, he was no longer a race car trying to plead a case with the officials. They had none of it. DeLone, Riley, and Scott Ford, by the way, in the pit lane system.
Yeah, and you notice as he tried to plead his case, a very good point there, he was unable to do so in French, which hurts here sometimes in these multilingual situations. It's very helpful to know the language of the organizers.
Good indication of the media focus here with all of the manufacturers here. We've been talking about that story. It's huge. Look at the throng.
Just analysing what he said, Sam, what do you think really is the problem there?
I think this problem is going to affect the other car.
Yeah, the other car is currently running down about 8th place right now. Just checking it out on the screen. Yeah, it's actually
the implication was it has something to do with the rear end as a result of more power. Yes?
Yeah, I mean, I think, Calvin, can we go back to you? It was difficult to hear what he was saying. He was speaking through the crash helmet there. What did he actually say to you? Just reiterate it.
Well, it was difficult for me as well, Andrew. A lot of noise here right on the front straightaway. The car's going by, but I'm in the drive lane of some type. It happened all of a sudden, and you can't get the car back, so the day's over for that Mercedes.
I think what we need to focus on a little bit is, one, if you remember, he was up on the curbs working the car hard, pitted 2 laps prior to his teammate who went the full 13 that they were hoping for. And when you're conserving fuel, you, by nature, don't you, you conserve car.
Well, he was definitely acting as the rabbit for the team. There's no question about that. But still in all, to have it go out so soon, I mean, these cars are tough. They're certainly meant to take a good deal more than that. Here is the leader, who, of course, has just gotten a huge break in, because of the problems hitting them, and also the leader of the 2 BMWs.
Only about an hour and 20 minutes into this 24-hour endurance run, and yet the action has been fast and furious. We'll be stepping away for a moment. Go nowhere. We'll be back. Welcome back to Le Mans. If you've seen that before, you may have been watching the great movie Le Mans. That same scene, 917 Porsches working through that sequence. Now we're watching the newest crop of supercars. That was the Toyota working through the Mulsanne hairpin, and you can see the fire spitting out the back. These are exciting cars.
Exciting cars. 3 Toyotas and 2 Porsches in the top 5. It goes Toyota, Toyota, Porsche, Toyota, Porsche, and then after that is the sole, let's say it again, the sole remaining Mercedes-Benz. As if you just ducked out of the room for a moment. Bernd Schneider is out of the race already. Transmission problems, we think.
And once again, his teammate, as we said, is sitting in the 6th spot. A little bit of smoke, perhaps, but they continue to look very strong at the front. The GT1 category rules right now. The highest place of the Le Mans prototype cars, the BMW #1 at this stage. And oh, that is one of the Conrad cars, and there is that is the right rear of that car. It is seriously in a world of hurt. Here's what apparently happened. Let's watch it, Sam.
Here he comes out of Arnage, one of the Conrad cars, and you can see the wheel complete.
that I told you in the first hour that the Vipers were actually being blown away by the Porsches. But now the Vipers, the 3 factory cars, have moved to first, second and third place. That's so the Vipers are now on the charge.
Seeing a very savvy move by the driver of this car, keeping that deranged tire in the grass where the friction is a lot less and perhaps not doing anywhere near as much damage to that machine. The lead, number 28 Toyota, down into the pits. Calvin's waiting.
Well, Martin Brundle is bringing the number 28 machine in. Watch it limit along pit lane very carefully. The key is if you do make a mistake there with the speed, it's a stop and go, which costs an eternity of time. Obviously, if you come back in again and travel the whole length of pit lane at around. But looks like a routine stop. As I mentioned before, the drivers can do their work on the car whilst they're actually refueling, but no other work can be done. I'm sure that they'll probably go for a new set. In fact, Emmanuel Collard has got into the car, the French guy, and he's very experienced here as well. Very strong driver lineup. But what a great opening swing for Martin Brundle. He's now working the Formula One Common. Give it some welly.
Yeah, Calvin, only 22 laps, so that's their third stop. They're averaging just 7 laps a stint. Well, that is really interesting. Let's go down to the...
Change tires as soon as they finish putting the fuel in. It's Le Mans rules. You cannot work on the car and put fuel at the same time other than making a driver change. With the car, they're wiping the windscreen. Car apparently it just wasn't producing it should on a readout, so they took the tail bonnet off, they checked all the fittings to make sure that there was nothing loose, nothing wrong, and they sent the car back out, and I haven't heard at this point yet whether it was cured or not. Everything seems to be fine.
And that car again working back out onto the track, taking a good look at the number 29 Toyota, which currently I would suspect start finish it will end up in the lead. It was a close second, and now our Conrad Motorsport car has made it down into pit lane. He couldn't keep that tire on the grass forever, and that tire now.
Pit stop which is coming up with the Conrad car. Let's reflect just a second on the tactical situation overall, because I think with Toyota making these much more frequent stops, it's going to start to catch.
Is totally askew, a lot of bodywork damage. That's probably not the biggest problem right now. They have to get underneath this car and do some work. Obviously, it's a rear-engine car. It's very tight in that rear suspension design, and they're going to get it up in the air. First things first is to try and get the wheel actually off the car. Sometimes they get so badly damaged you can't even get them off the car. No problems there. And as you in the corner of that car there, Franz Conrad with the black vest here is looking inside. He's really directing the team when he's not driving. He's the team manager also, and they're trying to ascertain what damage has been done. I'm going to go around to the other side here, see if we can get with Nick Ham, who is driving the car, and obviously this is going to be a lengthy pit stop, so we're going to try and get in the car. What happened, mate?
Well, I was in there right in the middle of the Indianapolis corner, and all of a sudden there was just a pop back there. I think it blew a tire, but that's what it felt like. It just all of a sudden went down and then sideways. I almost put it in the wall there, but just managed to get it back here.
Looks like you did a great job of saving it, but obviously this is going to take, but not the sort of start you were looking for.
Yeah, but that's okay. It's 23 hours to go yet. There's no problem. You say there is suspension damage?
It looks like the wheel was askew. There should be a little bit of maybe a control arm or something back there. I mean, not bad, but obviously they've got to do some work.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, we're giving Nick an update, and we'll try and give you a better...
Positive frame of mind on that. I mean, I'm sure he's crushed a little bit, but the lead Toyota now, the number 29 entry of Thierry Boutsen, has stopped in the pits. It assumed the lead as it pits situation. Boy, another quick stop in terms of they did do the driver change, so Boutsen is out. Either Ralph Kellner's or Geoff Lees will be behind the wheel, but Boutsen doing a very solid job in the early going. It's always nice to come in and turn the car over in the lead. Boutsen did just that. We'll be back at Le Mans in just a minute.